All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us here today. As many of you may know, I personally come from a family of small business owners and a family of entrepreneurs. People who have poured their life savings into building a successful business. Building a successful business takes hard work. It takes determination, and it takes the right tax regime and government regulations. And today it's incredibly concerning to learn and alarming that the NDP plans to increase taxes on job creators by almost 38%. I have to say, it feels like deja vu once again. In 2015, you may remember the price of oil crashed, and the NDP responded by introducing new taxes and driving up spending. In addition, they also increased business taxes by 20%, moving the rate from 10% to 12%. Their bad economic policies added more fuel to the fire, and as a result of their failed management of the economy, investment left, people left, and businesses started to close. After 4 years in government, we have worked hard to correct Notley's economic mistakes. We have reduced red tape, reduced taxes, and aggressively pursued new investment into Alberta. More importantly, Alberta saw more business tax revenue at an 8% tax rate during our time in government than it did at 12% when the NDP was in government. Our efforts are clearly paying off. WestJet has announced that Calgary will become the home of its 787 Dreamliner fleet. De Havilland is building a new aircraft manufacturing centre just outside of the city. McCain Foods has made their largest ever global investment in Calgary, and tech companies and so many others are opening up new offices in our incredible province. The Alberta Advantage is back and booming, and now is not the time to risk the future of Alberta. Despite all of this positive work, the NDP is planning to take us backwards. Their promised 38% increase in business taxes will hurt our economy, cost jobs, and impact families. We saw it in 2015, and we will see it again. Yesterday as well, even their economist Todd Hirsch admitted that he had not done a detailed analysis on the ramifications and implications of a 38% tax increase on investment and its possible effects on unemployment. You would think that they would have learned from their past mistakes, but this clearly isn't the case. But perhaps we shouldn't be surprised, because Notley herself has said in the past, quote, "Sometimes public interest is better served by limiting the profitability of that business," end quote. And so I ask, what was the public interest that was served when investment and business fled our province, eliminating jobs for Albertans and causing a mass exodus of families to other provinces? Is the public interest served when unemployment increases and families are worried about how they will put food on the table? Of course, the answer is no. But increasing taxes is at the very core of the NDP. Apart from Rachel Notley's own comments, many other NDP candidates have expressed similar views. The NDP candidate for Livingston McLeod, Kevin Van Siegem, has stated, and we've heard him talk about this a lot very recently. He recently wrote an op-ed in the Calgary Herald, whereby he stated, "Taxes don't kill jobs, they create jobs." We know that's not true, because we saw what happened when the NDP hiked taxes on job creators by 20%. Quite simply, unemployment increased. Gurinder Brar, the candidate for Calgary Northeast, is not content with a 38% tax increase. In an interview, he said his preference would be to increase taxes on job creators to 13%, marking that as an increase of over 63%. Rod Loyola, the candidate for Edmonton Ellerslie, has said, quote, "Taxes, the gift we give each other." The NDP desire to tax and spend is deep-rooted, but Alberta's United Conservatives have worked hard to cut taxes, bring back investment, business, and jobs. Lower taxes mean entrepreneurs can build businesses and hire more Albertans, and Albertans can pay their bills and feed their families. And so on May 29th, Albertans have a very clear choice before them. The NDP, who have promised to increase taxes, or a UCP government who will not increase taxes on businesses. Furthermore, we have also pledged to lower personal income taxes. A re-elected UCP government will create a new 8% bracket on income under $60,000. This means that every Albertan earning $60,000 or more will save $760 or over $1,500 per family. Albertans earning less than $60,000 will see a full 20% reduction to their provincial tax bill under this cut. The choice is very clear. Thank you, and I'd now like to turn it over to my colleague, Devin Dreeshen.
Well, thank you so much, Demetrios. It's great to be here in Calgary Bow, and open invitation if you ever want to come up north to Innisfil, Sylvan Lake. Actually, my riding had about 12 or so people already out door knocking here in Calgary, so just great campaign all across the province, and really impressive to see the United Conservative support all across this wonderful province here in Alberta. But as Demetrios was mentioning, Rachel Notley and the NDP have proven to Albertans that the NDP are no friends to Alberta job creators and businesses. Yesterday, the NDP announced their plan to punish Alberta's successful entrepreneurs and employers with a 38% tax increase. And that's obviously business tax going from 8% to 11%. I know that's 37.5%, and on social media, I think there was some upset NDP folks saying that it's not 38, but 37.5% increase to our businesses. And the last here in Alberta, and the last time the NDP and Rachel Notley were in government, were in office, businesses suffered from a 20% tax increase. And that sent businesses and investment fleeing the province of Alberta. Now, businesses both large and small were forced to close their doors, and record numbers of Albertans had no choice but to leave our province to find work. Now, we know that Rachel Notley and the NDP plan is to do it all over again, and they're all about raising taxes and making life more expensive to live here in Alberta. It's written in black and white in their platform, and it is their track record in government. Now, the NDP and Rachel Notley have outright said that they want to limit the profitability of businesses. She wants to put a cap on everything, including the dreams of Alberta entrepreneurs. The NDP plan will send investment fleeing Alberta, just like they did the last time they were in government. This is the same Rachel Notley and NDP who never even mentioned a carbon tax in the 2015 campaign, and then imposed a carbon tax on Albertans within their first year as government. It's the same NDP leader who rammed her secret carbon tax through the Alberta legislature, and it, to this day, remains the largest tax increase in the history of Alberta. Now, the carbon tax and the NDP's other anti-business policies saw businesses close and investments leave Alberta, leaving thousands of Albertans jobless. Take-home pay for Albertans dropped by an average of $6,400 over the NDP, or under the NDP government. That's why our first move when we formed government in 2019 was to axe the carbon tax. But despite our tax cuts, Rachel Notley and the NDP have already set the stage for Justin Trudeau. Former Trudeau Environment Minister Catherine McKenna said that without the Notley and NDP carbon tax, Ottawa wouldn't have implemented the national carbon tax. Now, that's the same carbon tax that's driving record inflation across the entire country. And that's the same carbon tax that's led to record high prices at our grocery stores. And it's the same carbon tax that's making the cost of heating our homes and fueling our vehicles more and more expensive. The only impact the carbon tax seems to have is obviously not lowering GHG emissions, but it does lower the bank accounts of Albertans. A memo from the Parliamentary Budget Officer actually states that by 2035, Albertans will be paying around $2,700 in a year in carbon tax alone. and that's after the so-called rebates from the federal government. Now, the NDP record and the NDP's new promise is increased taxes. United Conservatives will not allow this to happen. If re-elected, the United Conservatives will cut personal income taxes, saving families over $1,500 a year. And that was our first campaign commitment of this election, to make sure that we would have an 8% personal income tax bracket under $60,000. And we will fully suspend the fuel tax until the end of this year. And we will lower childcare costs, improve healthcare, and keep our communities safe. But most importantly, Alberta entrepreneurs and businesses can count on the United Conservative Party to keep our taxes low and to grow our economy, create jobs, and keep moving Alberta forward. Because we know that a 38% increase in taxes doesn't mean a 38% increase in revenue. And a United Conservative government has a track record of increasing investment and decreasing unemployment. Now, the choice in this election couldn't be clearer. Reckless spending and high taxes from the NDP, or a responsible spending plan and low taxes from the United Conservative Party. And with that, happy to take any questions with my colleague, Demetrios.
Thanks, Devin. We're going to start on the floor, and if you have a question on the phone, click *1. It's *1. Go ahead, Kean.
Kean Bexley with Countersignal. Question for Demetrios. One tax that hasn't been mentioned here today is the tax on students. Students every year pay radical student unions tens of millions of dollars, and I bring this up because the student union here in Calgary recently hosted a partisan press conference with the NDP. What are you doing to protect students who don't want their effectively tax dollars going to fund partisan NDP activity?
Yeah, well, it's something that I'd be happy to talk more with students about, and over the course of the next few weeks and months as well, to explore that in more detail with students. And get their perspective. Of course, the United Conservative government, we have made some changes back in 2019 and in 2020 as it relates to union dues and the proportion of union dues that goes towards political activity, and requiring there to be greater clarity over the portion of those union dues. We didn't look at that within the context of student organizations, but happy to have a conversation with students in the future and engage in some more thoughtful discussion around that.
Thanks. So we'll do some follow-ups if we have some time, but got a couple questions on the phone. Operator, next caller.
Thank you. Yes, the first question is from Janet French, CBC.
For Demetrios. In a forum last year, one of your fellow candidates compared transgender students in schools to mixing a teaspoon of dog feces into a batch of cookies. How proud would you be to call this person a colleague in the legislature, and why?
Yeah, my apologies. I'm not familiar with the comments that you've mentioned. I've been focused, of course, I think, as everyone can understand and imagine, on knocking on doors in my constituency, talking to my neighbors, talking about my track record as their MLA, pointing to the things that I've been able to accomplish for our community here in Calgary-Bow. And those are the things that I've been focused on over the past few weeks. So I haven't been spending a lot of time on Twitter or social media, just talking to my neighbors and my constituents.
Thank you. Operator, next caller. Operator, next caller, please.
Thank you. Catherine Kutkowski, Alberta Today.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. So the news release we got says that the United Conservative Party has committed to no tax increases. When I was looking at the budget and the climate plan, it looks like the carbon tax on large-scale industrial emitters is expected to increase in line with the federal rates, and that we still have the federal carbon pricing on consumers. And I'm wondering, will there be any change in that? Like, are you looking to bring back the provincial control over the carbon tax so we can control who gets rebates and how much, or are we sticking with the federal carbon tax, which is expected to go up?
Yeah, sure. So at this time, there hasn't been any change with respect to our policy there. Of course, the important thing that we want to draw attention to today is the fact that Rachel Notley and the NDP is pledging to increase business taxes by almost 38%, and it's quite interesting because. They appear to not do this in a very transparent way, but that this information simply came out in technical briefings as part of their costing for their plans. I find that really concerning. We saw this last time. We saw this in 2015. The NDP brought in a carbon tax. To your point, they never campaigned on it, but they brought in a carbon tax, and we seem to be seeing similar trends occurring now. Again, they haven't spoken openly to Albertans about this proposed 38% increase to business taxes, but there it was, buried in a lot of their costing and their budget documents. And I think it's important for Albertans to know, which is why we're here today, what the NDP's plans are when it comes to business taxes. And that's really important because, I mentioned earlier, we saw what happened when the NDP increased taxes on job creators last time. They had claimed back in 2015 that if we increase taxes on businesses, we're going to see more revenue and we're going to be able to spend in more areas, but the opposite happened, and we had warned about that, and other economists had warned about that, but the very opposite happened. After they increased business taxes, the total amount of investment fell. Of course, we've aggressively worked to reduce business taxes, as I'm sure you know, and we're seeing greater investment and greater revenue as a consequence of that decision. So it's the decision and the contrast between us and the NDP is very clear. The NDP once again pledging to make massive increase to business taxes. That's going to drive away investment. That's going to lower revenue, hurt Alberta businesses, hurt our society, hurt our families with limited job opportunities, whereas the UCP government will work and endeavor to keep taxes low, both personal taxes and business taxes, and make sure Alberta's prosperous and a great place for everybody.
All right. Follow up on the floor.
He wants to add to that. Yeah.
Go ahead, Devin.
Sorry about that. Just when it comes to the federal carbon tax, just so Albertans understand, it is the Liberal NDP coalition in Ottawa that is supporting this carbon tax. And the NDP obviously being one party. So you have an NDP membership here in Alberta. That's also Jagmeet Singh is your federal leader. And it is the NDP that's actually propping up this Liberal minority government in Ottawa. And that's really the federal carbon tax. That's where it's actually coming from. And the Federal Conservative Party, they've stated that they would axe the carbon tax. So the retail carbon tax would be eliminated here in Canada and also in Alberta if there was a federal Conservative government. So the province of Alberta, the United Conservatives, we are against the carbon tax. That's why we took it to the Supreme Court. We're one federal election away from not having a carbon tax on everything from home heating to groceries to fuel. We're one federal election away from that being scrapped in Ottawa. So as the NDP does have a deal with the Liberals till 2025 to keep that Liberal NDP coalition propped up in Ottawa. So we could possibly see in 2025 the elimination of the carbon tax in Canada and in Alberta. And that, I think, is a great thing for all Canadians and Albertans.
I was actually just going to ask about that. Pierre has committed to reducing the carbon tax, to cutting the carbon tax federally. And I'm curious what the process is for you guys and him. Have you been in direct conversations with the leader of the opposition in Ottawa? How fast does the carbon tax come off the table if Justin Trudeau loses the next election? Just walk Albertans through the process. How quick does that happen? How fast do grocery prices come down? How fast do home heating bills come down? What's the process?
No, great question. Hope you didn't have trouble getting in here today. It's something that actually we had Pierre Poilievre, the federal Conservative leader. He was actually in my riding a few weeks ago, and he committed to getting rid of the carbon tax. So it's an act from the federal government. They passed that law to have a carbon tax here in Canada. We're one of the few countries in the world that has a carbon tax, and it not just hurts our bank account. It doesn't just hurt every Albertan when they go buy groceries or fuel up their vehicle or heat their home, but it also hurts our international competitiveness. We have industries that have to compete and export products around the world, and they also have to pay a carbon tax to produce whatever it is they're exporting. And it just puts Canada at a competitive disadvantage to have this tax, this extra tax, that no other country, that hardly any other country in the world has. So the process essentially is 2025, when the NDP drops their support for the federal Liberals, it's one of the first things that, that I've heard that the federal Conservatives would do is to axe that tax, axe the carbon tax federally, and we'd all have a lot more money in our bank accounts. So it's a commitment by the federal Conservatives and something that we obviously as provincial Conservatives here in Alberta support.
Thanks, everyone. Candidates, specifically Devin, have an event they have to get to, so that's all the time we have. Thanks.
Thanks, buddy. Should be a
Steal the rest.